Gantz is a story about heartbreak. It's a story about staring into the abyss and coming out the other side. It is a story of both horrific imagery and characters enduring despite its overwhelming power. A story of valuing those we have in our lives, despite how small and insignificant we are in the universe. And it is those connections between characters that make Gantz a story worth remembering. You may not feel that's the case based on the amount of booba on these women, because Gantz is also what the average gamer would class as edgy. The story itself contains many mature themes that are crucial to the plot, yet it has a few glaring problems in how it implements them. Violence so intense I've never seen anything like it. Odd depictions of gay stereotypes and racial stereotypes, including a character committing blackface to an almost absurd realistic degree. And finally, various depictions of sexual assault. Full of flawed and selfish characters trapped in a seemingly endless nightmare of bloodthirsty creatures, brutal choices, and death. Only to be forced into experiencing it night after night after night, at the whim of an emotionless obsidian sphere. All of these things combined can give Gantz the reputation of being an edgy seinen manga and nothing else. And that's almost a fair observation. A lot of the issues that I've talked about already are very sensitive topics and real ones. I would accept any of those as reasons why you may not want to read it because it's too confronting or it just feels hollow. But I think, like many great series of the seinen demographic, it is purely the surface of a story that is heartbreaking. It's human, and ultimately a commentary on what it is to live. Is this video one of those, my degenerate boob manga is actually really deep and here's why? Yeah. But also no, Gantz is at its core a survival story of humanity. Throughout my reading, I had this feeling I had not felt for a while where I couldn't tell what was going to take place next in the story. It filled me with this intense dread, but also excitement at what lay after each page. I want to try and sell you on reading this manga, give you a taste of the depth it has and why it's worth experiencing despite what it may seem to be. My name is Mugen, and this is Gantz, the game of humanity. Just a disclaimer, this video is full of very confronting imagery that I will have to blur to appease the YouTube gods, so if you want to see it uncensored, head over to the Patreon, fully uncensored version there. To sell you on the stuff about Gantz that makes it more unique than just its premise, I do have to tell you that premise. The story follows Kei Kurano and Masaru Kato, who are both teens transported to an empty apartment full of other random people surrounding a black orb dubbed Gantz. They learned that all in the room had just experienced some form of a death, including themselves, having died being killed by an oncoming train. Gantz transports everyone in the room to a place in Tokyo where they must find and kill a target, armed with a unique set of highly advanced guns and power suits, which I can only describe as otaku sci-fi gimp suits. Despite the look and also it resembling a shriveled prune when in use, the suit actually enhances the wearer's ability to an insane level. And yeah, it's a bizarre style, but even more odd are the monsters they encounter, ranging from the absurd and wacky to something akin to a monster from a death metal album or an eldritch beast of some older world lost long ago. But then, this man will literally say, fuck all this shit. I just rewatched Jurassic Park for the 50th time, so these aliens in this mission are gonna be dinosaurs. Dinosaurs that stand up, speak okay English, with a T-Rex that can shoot fireballs. Fucking fireballs! And if you think for a second that's just silly, Oku will simply reply, I don't give a shit, my dude. It's cool. Which it is. The creator of Gantz, Hiroya Oku, when making the series, followed the fun of his stories when deciding the kind of beings our characters would face. Regardless if they made much sense in the story's overall continuity, it's ultimately one of Gantz's strongest points. You are interested in the why of it all. Why is Gantz doing this? What is Gantz? Why are we hunting these monsters? What's at the end of all of this death? These questions prevail continuously until the third phase of the manga, teasing us through each death-inducing mission. And each one feels like a sprint as it unfolds, partially because Oku doesn't ever give you a chance to breathe, much like the characters. The story overall is typically segmented into two different kinds of chapters: mission chapters and everyday life chapters. Missions can last as long as 40 chapters, depending on the strength and horror of the monster they must kill. And in these missions, we see that life in Gantz is fleeting. Every single mission is a battle royale on its own. Characters can be introduced in one chapter and then killed the very next. Every new night in the Gantz room brings new groups of people who must learn to fight and survive or be truly killed by whatever target they must hunt next. It's a story that scratches that itch in my brain that I used to have when I watched Game of Thrones for the very first time as a teenager. Anyone can truly die and never come back. There are consequences to actions, and there are sometimes overwhelming odds that can be overcome, but only with sacrifice. And it does feel that cut and dry. There are no other loopholes into getting out of this game. There is only survive or die. And that can instill in every single character a sense of dread I can't really put into words. But to give you an idea of that feeling, I want to show you a snippet from the second mission of the series, very early in the manga. So just skip here if you don't want to know. Kei, Kato, and Kishimoto so far are the regular characters we have been following throughout the story in their everyday lives. Now understanding that they will be brought back to the room a second time, they utilize the equipment that they have been given by Gantz and are tasked to kill something called the Tanaka alien. Nishi is one of the players who has been coming back to the room continuously and enjoys the thrill of the game. A very disturbed character who we find out uses the Gantz equipment out of the room to kill cats and dispose of people he finds annoying. If you feel like I'm describing you while watching this, please go see a psychiatrist. He feels that since power has been given to him, he should use it how he wants to, regardless of the consequences or ethical reasons. He's not interested in any kind of teamwork, and so once the mission begins, Nishi goes invisible and vows to kill any who get in his way. It doesn't take long until they find the Tanaka alien and notice it isn't particularly hostile against the members, until something squashes one of the baby crows that's following it. Nishi, the Tanaka alien in fury, launches an ear-curdling scream in pursuit. Nishi fights the alien in the river, losing his gun, and then in trying to avoid its attacks, punches it away from him. He appears to handle the situation well, until black ooze pours out of the holes of his suit. Nishi begins to beg for someone to help him as he knows that without the suit, he is as useless as any human is against these aliens. Nishi begins wading through the river, panting and crying as the alien launches at him with the intent to kill. With a single scream, Nishi's eyes explode, his teeth fly loose, and his eardrums burst. As Nishi lies there, blind, deaf, and numb, he realizes he's at his end. Crying through the blood that he nearly reached 100 points, begging, pleading for anyone to save him, his mother, something out there with the power to do so, anyone. And then he dies. Gantz is unforgiving. The people it brings doesn't discriminate whether or not they have the ability to fight or not. People as old as seniors and as young as toddlers are taken to the room, even animals. Gantz sees all life on Earth as ones to use, and if the entities die, it won't matter. Gantz will just summon more. And so as people continue to die on these missions, there are a constant rotating cast of characters depending on how many are killed every single night. At the end of every night, Gantz will allot every member of the team points. And you get those points if you are lucky enough to not only survive, but also kill a target. As Kei returns night after night to fight, he begins to understand that if he gets those 100 points Nishi mentioned, there are 3 options. You can get a stronger weapon to use in your next mission. You can be free from Gantz and the room, or if he really wants to, he could use the points to revive anyone who has died in the game. This is the loop of Gantz. And if all these characters die, Gantz will just summon more to the room. It's even said in the manga that when reviving characters, people aren't given life. They just refuel the Earth's ammunition. But like I mentioned, that is one half of Gantz's story in the mission chapters. The life chapters take place after each Gantz night, where we follow the characters either introduced the night before or have become recurring members of the team. And these slice of life chapters are a lot slower paced, introducing new characters before their eventual death to then come to the room, or following Kay as he grapples with his experiences from the room. With this, I want to talk about Kay as a character and his life. I've already established that the hellish missions these characters must endure are situations probably most awful, but you'll find as you read that there are characters who almost enjoy this life more than their already mundane and ordinary one. Kay, our main character, is an interesting teenager, but in the sense that he isn't interesting. If anything, he's kind of an awful person. He's a very selfish teenager whose only interest in life right now is, honestly, like many, just getting laid and trying to get through school. Our introduction to him is the very first panels, which he stares at a bikini spread of his favorite idol Rika, while an older lady tries to ask him for help to find her platform. He brushes her off as an annoyance and that she can't always rely on people to help you, so just like, get fucking good, Gran. But that's Kay. His original death that led to the Gantz room is because he felt pressured by Kato to help save someone's life, while you can hear his inner monologue talking about how no one's gonna help him. The dude should just help himself if he wants to live. He is constantly judging people by how they look, what they say, and assuming things about them just as people would assume things about him. And I think it's something that is very common in teens. I think everyone may have gone through a period of their life like this. He thinks he knows everyone. He thinks he has the world figured out, but he doesn't. And in those Gantz missions, he isn't overly concerned about randoms being saved like Kato is. The only risks Kay seems to take are the ones that ensure his survival, or at least make him seem cooler to the only girl in the early chapters, which is Kishimoto. Part of this mindset for Kay is that his everyday life is extremely mundane. He has no attention from anyone in the real world. He's also teased and sometimes bullied. But when faced with a true danger that he can overcome, there is this wish to be somebody better than everyone else. Kay and Kato are opposites in this way, and it's odd to say, but to really put it cut and dry, Kato is basically a shonen character. And this is something that Oku kind of plays around with in his other manga series, Inuyashiki. He represents characters based on their manga tastes and showing the worst and best sides of them. In Inuyashiki, he shows a character who is someone who likes to stay indoors but ultimately has good moral standings, even though he loves a series like Gantz. Yes, he put his own series in another series. It's fucking brilliant. In the Gantz instance, Kato would be a shonen reader because he's compelled to always do the right thing, but he's always being abused for trying and being called different names for it. That is because he exists in a world that is unforgiving to someone like him, whereas Kay is not. He would be a seinen reader, someone who knows the world is cruel and unfair, raging at it for all the misfortune that has befallen him, but succeeding because of that. Not feeling like he has any responsibility to help others because there is no obligation for him to. Would anyone else do the same? At least that is what we may feel when we meet new characters who are drawn into the Gantz world. Many of them come from all walks of life, and some use the rules of Gantz and the power it gives to their benefit. One criminal tries to take advantage of Kishimoto before he is transported to the mission, and even stows away the X-gun to kill other rival gangs in the real world. Others are prepared to never leave the room because it gives them such a lease on life they can never get anywhere else, something that Kay slowly starts to feel. Later in the manga, there are instances of characters who use the nights of these missions to do drugs, get drunk, and engage in taboo acts of sexual depravity, something they could never do in the real world. This is the world of Gantz, and even out of missions, it is a harsh, brutal one. A world Oku feels does reflect humans and their ability to do awful things, even in a death-inducing sci-fi setting like this one. Because of this, it has garnered this reputation of being an edgy, seinen fan service series that really has no kind of value, just being violent and sexually charged because it's cool or shocking. But when it comes to Oku, his mentor, and the inspirations that he puts into his work are one of the reasons why the amount of edgy content feels more like a strong backbone for an overall amazing story with deep sci-fi themes. Oku may be defined by the current generation as being down bad, but part of it derives from his work as an assistant to the mangaka Naoki Yamamoto. Yamamoto is known more in the adult manga scene, especially because he was one of the few who began making manga in the 80s with erotic imagery and strong adult themes, something Yamamoto attributes to reading Go Nagai. His most notable works are Arigato and Dance Till Tomorrow. And in an interview with Otaku Mode, Oku spoke about what it was like being an assistant to a man whose work was very confronting, and attributes how much he learned that manga rules are like many rules in art. They're just guidelines, and they can be bent or at times broken, whether it is the subject matter you are showcasing or the tools to create the images he wanted to achieve. Many valuable lessons were learnt there. It felt like this experience paved the path I wanted to tread, and my consciousness toward manga creation changed during this time. This was also the start of me thinking about drawing manga on a computer. It is well known to fans of Oku that he uses computer-generated technology to create his backgrounds and make an environment where he can compose his shots and storyboard with 3D figures. So after tracing the backgrounds, he can focus more on just freely hand-drawing the characters, adding in the amount of detail slowly over Gantz's 13-year run. Something that now other mangaka like Inio Asano have taken into their workflow with their recent works. It's partially why some aliens look so otherworldly and have that 3D imposed look to them, adding to their scale or their terror. Gantz is a sci-fi story, and with that genre comes many different avenues for storytelling. So of course, Gantz uses a lot of the genre's aesthetics to its advantage. Part of this is because of Oku's love for films. In the back end of the Gantz volumes, Oku talks a lot about the kinds of films he watches and loves, ranging from Alien to The Matrix, Terminator, Jurassic Park, The Thing, and even niche foreign films like Nikita. The list goes on, and if you've been paying attention, I think you could see a lot of those influences. Side note, Oku said in one of these that Lord of the Rings script sucks, and it made him sleepy. Why the hell am I making this video? Besides being wrong, Oku takes a lot from Hollywood in his work, and of course, he does it in his own unique way, especially when it comes to the cosmic horror aspect that sci-fi can bring. Look at the film The Thing, a monster horror film that thrives on the fear of someone being imitated by another entity, which he implements with later monsters, shifting to resemble team members, but also having monsters evolve into organisms you can never really define or comprehend, except for the Boo one. So far, I've covered the essence of what these films can do for his story, but sci-fi is more than just lightsaber battles, slow-mo action scenes, and Marty McFly getting hit on by his teen mother. In the early days of the genre, it served as a window into what humanity's future may hold, whether that was very bright or extremely bleak. The idea of space or technology wasn't just a setting, but it created ultimately a world or a universe that could challenge what we thought about ourselves. Now, these themes of introspective thought can be in these large action blockbuster pieces of media in any medium. The latest Dune films, I think, are a great example of that. And some like Gantz toe that line between being a coat of paint for cool fights, gruesome deaths, and cute girls wearing tight suits, but also having extremely thought-provoking themes about who we are and our significance in the universe. And while Gantz does it in a very dark and brutal way, it does it in a way that I think is just as effective. You're probably thinking, how? Okay, well, to answer that, I need to ask you a question. What makes us human? Besides anatomy, what distinguishes us from another being as a human? Some would say sentience. Despite that, many other animals on Earth also exhibit positive and negative emotions and can communicate with each other. An answer that seems to be the one we point to in a lot of science fiction is our identities. We make choices based on who we are and our past experiences, and that's attributed to our memories. And memories seem to be what defines us, who we are and who we later become. The best sci-fi story that answers this question for me is the Blade Runner films. The first one centers around replicants, androids created to look human and act human, but are used as soldiers and slaves as they have a low life expectancy. At a glance, you could not tell the difference between a human and a replicant. Only through a test can you truly determine that. The main character is asked to question a human secretary to prove the effectiveness of this test. After a while, it is revealed that the woman in question, Rachel, is a replicant, but she doesn't know. And the reason is because she was given implanted memories to create her personality and believability that she is human. Oku kind of plays around with this when reviving characters from Gantz. When a character is brought back to life, they are fully projected again into being, Gantz recreating everything about them. Some of the characters questioning what happened to their original body and whether they are the same person that died or just a copy given the memories of the original before it was deceased. Are they the same person even with the same memories? What if a character is revived twice and there are now two versions of the same person? Which one is the original? Is it the one that was first, or is it the one that is more themselves? Do you remember the points and the ultimate goal of reaching 100 so you can be free from the Gantz room? Well, when you are freed, it erases all your memories associated with the Gantz room. So what would happen if a character went through all this trial and tribulation, facing conflict after conflict, and changing to become an almost completely different person to just revert back to the person they used to be? A person they wish they never were. Oku heavily values in his story the experiences in our lives, whether they are traumatic or not, truly define us and help us choose who we later become. Another aspect of sci-fi Oku toys with is the human purpose and its place in the universe, because it is emphasized and teased that Gantz didn't come from this world, or at least the technology itself can't be something man-made. To give you an example of how he does this, let's talk about ants. Just regular old ants that walk around doing their job. As you walk along the street, you maybe notice that you have stepped on a line of ants. Perhaps not on purpose, but you've killed some. They're there, and I bet many of you watching would not really think much of it, right? You're walking. The same as if you would find a lone ant on your kitchen table. You would probably squash it if it was in your home, right? The ant is tiny. It's not something worth much thought. In fact, you probably would not notice the hundreds of ants we have walked over in our lifetimes. Hundreds of thousands, millions probably. An unknown amount of ants killed just from us walking around. They don't matter, right? In the grand scheme of our lives, this ant is not worth my time and attention even if I killed it, despite their value to an ecosystem or whatever. It just doesn't affect my life. Now let's take the ants and replace them with humans. Imagine you're walking outside and you have been squashed by some other greater being. Just everyday life. They don't care what you are. There's no reason to be careful around you or any consequence from this. You're tiny. You don't matter in the grand scheme of a larger being. There is no meaning to your life. It just ended as easily as the ants. Even if you think what your task was important, you were trying to do it and get it done. Like the ants, didn't matter. Because you are nothing compared to the greater being above you. All your life, memories, experiences, and aspirations snuffed out by something greater than you who does not see your life as valuable. In essence, with sci-fi, that is the perspective the universe has, as well as the entity of Gantz. You are smaller than a speck in an ocean of endless lives, all equal to you in death, filled in a universe older and larger than we can comprehend, just like the tiny ants are to us. And Gantz loves to make our human characters feel this way, especially in the later third of the story, almost in the literal sense. In one mission, the Gantz members are sent to a location that isn't Tokyo, but another species city. Gigantic beings that keep other species as pets and consume humans for nutrition, paying no mind if the humans are squashed or if they run out of the drain. You can see this with films like 2001 that emphasize that the universe is vast and unknown to humans, and that even with all our leaps in technology, we are still just as lost as to the nature of our true existence that we care to admit. Even with the obelisk which seemingly granted knowledge to humanity, it is very reminiscent of the Gantz orb itself. But instead of giving knowledge of existence, it gives direction and constraints of existence. Fulfill this task or be dead for good. The essence of why this is happening also makes the mission of killing the other monsters just as interesting when communication with them is possible. Skip here again if you don't want this example spoiled in the first act. When fighting the last alien in the mission, Kato is taken aback when it consumes the brains of one of the other members and then able to communicate in English. And the only thing it wants to know is,
who are all of you? Why attack the creatures here? Who sent you? We have done nothing to bother you. And now I'm all alone.
This is the first time any character can communicate with the enemy, and ultimately it is pointless, because at the end of the day only one of them can live, the statue or Kato. The statue is not different from us in the sense it had companions. It had those it came here with, never killing any humans, only for Gantz to send our characters to kill them anyway, against their will. And it doesn't end there, as you will see with other targets who have emotional connections to those our characters kill. On a mission, Kay is almost destroyed by a group of aliens who can communicate telepathically. Making it out alive by killing a few of them, they vow to find him and end him for the suffering of their companions. These aren't just bloodthirsty entities, but beings who feel pain and heartache, whose emotions feel as justified as our main characters. We are stuck in a cold, harsh universe as empty as the hope you have to outrun your inevitable death. You pray for a god, a loved one, hell, anyone to save you from this pain, only for the universe to just say nothing. These are the answers that Gantz will give you. Whether you find them satisfying or not is as conflicting as the questions. Was all this fated to happen anyway? Do humans have free will? Are we no different from any other entity? Do we have value? Do we matter? Many of these things can drive someone to be nihilistic, seeing no point in this story or any existence. Oku does show that in his characters. When humans believe they are at the end of their rope, you see so many different reactions. Oku seems to be very interested in humans and wants to show us something we haven't seen before, whether that is unnerving and very real, or beautiful and emotionally true. And to show you what I mean, I'm going to tell you about Kay, as he is in later chapters, and what Gantz truly succeeds in doing with all its edgy imagery and philosophical questioning. Again, just skip here. In chapter 90, Kay is transported back to the Gantz room, barely surviving a life-threatening mission. But upon Gantz giving him his score, Kay notices something. He's alone. No one survived. The girl, Sei, who wanted to be his girlfriend when they got back, Kishimoto, Kato, both he had lived through so much with, are now gone. And you'll notice that for Kay, up until this point, all that excited him was to go back to the room where he was someone. He mattered. Even in this harsh, unforgiving world of his everyday life, or even the Gantz room, he could make a difference here. But now that there's no one there, what does that importance matter? Now realizing after they're gone how much he did care, despite not ever showing it. For the first time, and I mean truly the first time, Kay is alone. Over time, through some school hijinks, Kay is dared to ask out a lonely and unremarkable girl called Tay. While flattered, she suggests they may be friends first, and as time goes on, Kay ends up feeling pressured to spend time with her, especially after she nearly dies from a school attack by a Gantz creature. So after walking home together many times, Kay ends up sleeping with her, and continues to, again and again. He goes on the train to places with her and hears about how she wants to draw manga, only for him to suddenly realize how he cares for someone and that someone actually cares about him. Even told by people who feel like they know Kay, who know that he doesn't trust people and that he doesn't really care for people, Tay doesn't believe that. She knows that's the kind of person he used to be, but he's changed. Kay finally has this small piece of happiness in this unforgiving real world we live in, and a haven he wants to stay in so he never has to return to that room. Coming from the guy who could not wait to get back to it, because like Kato before him, Kay has that special someone to care for. to come back to live for. Gantz is a story built on the connections we make with people, and it is the reason characters at first glance feel selfish, bland, rude, disgusting, and extremely nihilistic, but can be turned to do something so unselfish it endangers their own life for someone else. That is the beauty of Gantz. Kei and Nishi, when they first meet, are mirrored versions of each other. Nishi being what Kei could later become: cold, calculative, pessimistic, and selfish. But you only fully realize that when you learn what kind of solitary life Nishi had before his death, as besides his apparent mother, there was no one who he cared for, and if there were people who wanted to be close to him, there was never a point where his ego would allow that to happen, shutting people out, finding joy in things that are objective-based. Thus, when he needs others the most, it's too late. As the series goes on and you continue to read, you will find that characters change for better or worse, but not because of the world, but because of their emotional attachment to the people they care about, choosing to keep fighting to save the ones they love and go to extreme lengths to do so, to stare into the abyss of Gantz anyway, despite the horror that stares back. And that's an answer that I feel is compelling in the face of this overwhelming sense of inferiority in the universe. Even if we are just replaceable sacks of meat and bone whose only tie to being unique are our memories, it doesn't mean those experiences and the people in those memories don't matter. Series like Gurren Lagann are amazing because they give you this sense of us being human is what makes us what we are. And fuck the universe for thinking it can push us back. And oddly, that is how Gantz answers with its main host of characters. People who know what they do may be futile and only end in their death, but charge forward in the hope of escaping it anyway. Trying doesn't mean it wasn't worth doing. Gantz is messy, and even looking at the reception from people who have read or tried to read it, I can see how people think it is as deep as any other text or as mindlessly violent and erotic as another seinen series. But I think that is telling for Gantz as a story because it is about us, humans. We are flawed, broken things that make some of the worst choices and do some of the most unthinkable things. We are obsessive and impulsive, confronting and relentless in our violence to each other and others. We have a sense of importance and arrogance in our lives as we are selfish. But at the same time, we are contradictive, selfless, kind, compassionate, and willing to try and do something beyond our control, even if it is bigger than ourselves. Making connections with strangers who we meet only by coincidence, but can change us for the better in ways we could never guess. Gantz isn't just an edgy, horny, violent, philosophical, endearing love story about whether or not we matter in the universe and whether or not we have this sense of superiority about ourselves, but a story that's trying to show all of that. And it's trying to show us. It's about us. Humans. Thanks so much for watching and making it to the end of the video, and if you really enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, as well as watching another video. It helps the channel heaps. For this video, I want to thank the folks over on the Patreon for pledging to have this video be made. A big shout out to Lenoriel, Andrew Goss, Angel Lahoz, and Robin. Thanks so much for being a part of the Patreon. If you want to support financially for the creation of more videos like this, you can do so over at the Patreon in the description, where you can support for just $1.50 a month. Let me know in the comments and in the community Discord below what you thought of the video, as well as what you would like to see next. If I end up loving what you recommend, I will probably make a video about it. But that's all from me. Thank you again for watching. My name's Mugen. As always, have a good one.